here to talk about Cauldron today. Cauldron has been around a while. If any of the older investors are around, they'll know that. But there has been a bit of a rebirth. And what I'm here to do today is explain that rebirth, the new strategy, and a story and how we're going to create value. And it's not, as I do obviously look at things like hot copper, it's not because we're about to do a capital raise, guys. Don't worry about that. It is just simply to tell the new story. You can turn the next slide, thanks. So it's great to have Greg talk previously, because a lot of what I say will actually reinforce what he has said and vice versa. Uranium is a core part of our strategy. We do have a foundational asset, which is Yanri, and similar to the Alligator asset there, it's an ISR asset, which is really crucial. More broadly, we will also be looking at the energy transition, and there are a few little commodities there that we like the look of at the moment. And the ability to deliver on those is driven by our new team, which I'll get into on the new slide. New chairman, me, new exploration manager, all focused on building a revised asset portfolio. We only recently did a capital raise, well supported through Canaccord, great set of shareholders, and we've got the confidence now to move forward and execute our strategy. We do have an existing asset portfolio, and what that means is we can probably sell some existing assets, generate value from those, and then we can use those funds to further the new strategy. On to the next slide. Now, we've actually put a more fulsome investor presentation out only last week. This slide is slightly different to the other one because what I've done here is run through the team as opposed to the board of directors. If you want to know about the directors, you can look on the website. So last year, we've had Ian Mulholland join. Ian, as chairman, is a geo, extremely well respected in the exploration world. Strong track record of hardcore exploration and discovery. Myself, I joined very late last year, and I do have a bit of a background in RAD and nuclear stuff, both through Rothschild in London, where I was involved in M&A and corporate matters with respect to nuclear industry. And also I was involved in getting approved and financed Australia's only commercially operating radioactive waste repository, as well as a chemical hazardous waste facility. Michael Fry is also with us. Michael provides COSEC and CFO services, and again, long track record in the sort of the small end of the ASX and exploration activity. And finally, I'm really pleased to say Angelo's joined us. Now, Angelo joined us only a few weeks ago, and getting a decent geologist and exploration manager at the moment is really tough. Angelo is fantastic. His passion for rocks and geology and the geological process that had happened millions of years ago, he can talk for hours. We've been, Angelo and I, up on site visits recently because we're looking at buying some assets. And it's fantastic to have someone who's so passionate on board. And it really, between Ian and himself, you can see that we've got the technical expertise to assess new asset opportunities. And then through Michael and myself, we've got the commercial capacity to do that too. So I think we're really well positioned. Next slide, please. So the current portfolio, we have Yanri, it's uranium, it's ISR, and just in comparison, it's about twice as big as the asset that Greg was mentioning, although it is in WA, which provides some near-term development challenges. We've got some sand assets in WA. We like the silica market. There's some really good sustainability aspects around that. And silica can be used in a whole range of things for the energy transition and other things, including, glass for solar panels and microprocessors and stuff. And we've got the Blackwood gold asset, and that is the asset that we're probably looking at selling. Good asset, tier, 200,000 ounces, of historical production out of there. But it's probably better suited to someone who's an expert in sort of, Victorian underground gold. So we think there's better value there for someone else to take that asset on. Next page. So what you see us doing, we've already announced that we are looking to create value out of Blackwood. PAC partners out of Melbourne are helping us with that process. We've then got Yanri, I'll get onto in a second. And Yanri has, one of the largest resources of uranium in WA, and it is, as opposed to some of the other ones in WA, it is amenable to ISR leaching, kind of like the South Australian alligator asset that we talked about earlier. So there is an opportunity to. I've just got a low battery warning. There is an opportunity to put some more holes into Yanri. We know where that mineralisation continues, and we can expand that asset base. But similarly, we can look to purchase land outside of WA that has more opportunity for near-term development, given obviously there are a few issues with the WA policy at the moment. And then finally, we're looking at other assets within the general energy transition thematic. Next slide. I'm just going to quickly run through a couple of things on the uranium. One over. Look, the uranium, there's a perfect, one more slide, thanks. There's a perfect storm at the moment with uranium. For years, people did not understand that, uranium and the nuclear generation can be seen as green. There was a balance between what do you do at end of life with nuclear waste versus the benefits of low carbon baseload power. Internationally, that balance is now very heavily on the side of decarbonisation and baseload carbon-free power. In Australia, we may be a little bit behind that, but certainly with AUKUS, that mood is starting to change in Australia, and I think that's a positive outlook for uranium here. Next slide. Greg mentioned this. ISR leaching. 20 years ago, it was about 15% of the market. Now it's 60% of the market. Why is that? Because it's cheaper. And it means that any assets that are amenable to ISR leaching, such as the alligator one, and such as Yanri, will be the first ones that get developed. Next slide. Huge nuclear renaissance going on around the world. Many countries looking to take advantage not only of low carbon, but also diversification away from oil and gas and reliance on Russia. Next slide. What's interesting is Russia and Eastern aligned countries do account for a significant proportion of global U production and conversion. What you're finding now, therefore, is that the US doesn't want to buy Russian uranium. Hey, who would have thought? And so there's a lot of focus on finding new sources of U in geographically friendly and geopolitically friendly environments. Next slide. Onto Yanri. We're located here in WA. It's a big asset in a region with some other good deposits. It is amenable to ISR leaching, and therefore that means it's amenable to low cost OPEX, low cost CapEx. Next slide. The deposit is open. We know where to look for some additional tonnes of U, and that's one thing that we're looking to do with some of the money that we raised late last year. Next slide, because Greg's already gone over ISR, I won't talk about it, except it is crucial to having the lowest cost mines. I'm very pleased to say that Yanri is ISR eligible. Next slide. One more. Thank you. ESG. We are all focused on decarbonisation and the energy transition. That's our thematic. What you'll see with uranium companies from a social license perspective is you have to be transparent. One of the benefits of the uranium industry is there are some fantastic global resources like World Nuclear Database on IAEA and IEA. The data there is absolutely transparent, and it needs to be to give people confidence in the industry. So I think that's a big positive of uranium. Next slide. You can see here, and Tim mentioned at the start, our market cap's quite small at $5 million. And just to give a bit of a comparison, our Yanri deposit is about twice the size of the alligator deposit that was talked about earlier, yet we're about 1/20th of their market cap. Now, that's a bit of a generous comparison, but what it shows you, though, is that there's a lot of room for upside in Cauldron, not only through Yanri, but through a new team that's dedicated to building an asset portfolio in the energy transition space. That's about it for now.
Thanks, Jono. Bang on time. You kind of touched on a tone with the WA government in regards to policy. Does that impact Yanray?
Yeah, look, WA policy is a little problematic, but that's the WA policy currently. It was only brought in 2017, and what you've seen with things moving in federal land with AUKUS, there's a groundswell of support coming through in Australia for nuclear. We're going to have nuclear subs in Australia very soon. Those nuclear subs have 200 megawatt nuclear reactors in them. Essentially SMRs, small modular reactors. You know what? If they're good enough to be sitting off the coasts of our country and sitting a couple of meters away from our sailors, then I think the country realises they're good enough to be placed on the ground and generating low carbon power for us.
And can you explain how the Yanray project has the kind of potential to have low risk exploration opportunities?
So there's been a lot of historic drilling on Yanray. We've got a really good understanding of the paleo channel there and where it extends and how we can infill drill and things like that. So, that is one thing that we will look to do. We'll balance that, though, against spending money in jurisdictions outside of WA that don't have that current policy issue.
And when you spoke about the kind of the portfolio approach, what sort of commodity-based assets would you look at in regards to where you're positioning yourselves?
Yeah, so our mantra of exploring the energy transition provides a fair bit of breadth. But probably means we won't be looking at the sort of ferroalloys and that kind of thing. And it'll build upon the existing asset base, which is obviously uranium. We've got some silica, and other things that are essential to decarbonising the economy.
And have you had any early interest in kind of securing offtakes, or are you having some discussions with kind of global partners that are interested in the project?
Not as yet. That said, as a future supply of uranium in Australia, which is geopolitically like the most friendly to the US there is, and the US still remains the largest user of uranium and the largest operator of nuclear plants, I don't think you'll ever have a problem selling uranium out of Australia.
And so what are the next sort of milestones over the next 6 months in terms of, say, drilling on Yanray?
Yeah, so look, I mentioned that we've been out on some site visits recently. So, we are progressing with that strategy of looking at new projects and new land. I won't go into too much detail about exactly what they are, but they're consistent with the strategy. So you look at us to do that. You look at us deliver value out of things like Blackwood and the sand assets. And then we'll be looking at Yanray as well.
I was going to ask you about the sand assets and probably just finish on that. So in your recent quarterly report, you kind of mentioned the opportunity for sale of bulk sand into kind of overseas markets. Can you give us some further details of that?
Yeah, so we've got there is a stockpile of existingly mined and screened product that sits on our mining lease. Additionally, then you can sell sand for sort of construction sand, so using concrete, or sand for filling land reclamation. The biggest market for that is Singapore, although Hong Kong is also a market, and that's a market which is not necessarily that high margin, but it's extremely high volume. It's millions of tons a year that go into that market. So that is an interesting opportunity.
And I think we'll just finish. I think you touched on selling a gold asset potentially. Do you know what that's worth?
I won't get drawn into how much that's worth, but I would say that, look, if we do deliver some value out of that, that will be very helpful and allow us to, go and put that into the ground in uranium in some way, shape or form, or buy some more energy transition assets.
Jono, thanks for your time. That's all we have time for. Nice to see you again. Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Tim.